Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our March 23rd Board of County Commission meeting. We are going to begin this morning with an invocation by Pastor James Brocious from Stewart Alliance Church, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance by Gary Bowerman of the U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary Flotilla 559. Please stand and join us.
Morning.
Morning.
Shall we pray? Father, again, thank you for this beautiful day you've given us. Thank you for this beautiful area. Thank you for these men and women and the many that help them to govern us. We pray for great wisdom and direction. We pray, Father, for peace and purpose, for good in our area. So again, Lord, in all the decisions today, we pray that you would just grant that direction. Thank you that you've come to encourage us and bless us and give us life and life abundantly. So how I pray that might spread across our area and blessing. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Let's pray. Let's have the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, on this morning's agenda, we have one additional item, consent number 13, adoption of a resolution accepting and approving a warranty deed from Tightline Lakes LLC for a dedication of a 15-foot right-of-way. And no consent pull, so that goes back to the board.
Madam Chair, move approval of the agenda with the additional consent item 13.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion to approve the approve the agenda and the consent agenda by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Jenkins. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. And our proclamations and special presentations for this morning, we have proclamation Surveying and Mappers Week, presented by Ms. Laura Beaupre.
Good morning, Commissioners. Yes, we have a proclamation declaring Surveyors and Mappers Week in Martin County, Florida. Surveyors and mappers are counted among the founding leaders of our country and were instrumental in the formation of the layout of property boundaries in the United States. In recognition of Surveyors and Mappers Week, March 21st through the 27th, the Board acknowledges the men and women of this profession for their diligence in meeting the continuing needs of our communities. And here to accept, we have Paige Regolino, oh my gosh, President of the Florida Surveying and Mapping Society, Indian River Chapter. Sorry, Paige.
Good morning, I'm used to it, thank you. Hello, my name is Paige Regolino, and I'm the president of the local Indian River chapter of Florida Survey and Mapping Society. Surveying has been around since the time of the pyramids and today is more advanced than ever before. Surveyors are more just the people you see on the side of the road. We are the first ones there when a project begins and the last one when the project is complete. A world without surveyors is a very unorganized world. And for women in surveying like me, only making about 4% of all licensed surveyors in the state of Florida, the opportunities are endless. So on this Global Surveyors Day and Surveyors Week, and on behalf of all the past, present, and future surveyors, I thank you.
That's right.
Got the whole crew here.
Oh, boy.
I know, everybody's got to scoot in.
Behind you, Laura, there's somebody behind you.
Oh, sorry. Straggling in here.
Come on this side.
Now to the back door.
I know, that's a lot of people.
Form a straight line.
Okay, we'll do a couple.
I can't help myself. It is what it is. Oh, damn. Why don't you all tell us, how old you are, where you're from? tell us a little bit about yourselves. Nice job, Stacy.
And our next proclamation is declaring Vietnam War Veterans Day in Martin County.
We have not forgotten, nor will we ever forget, the men and women who served so honorably in the Vietnam War, and their sacrifice is an inspiring reminder of the patriotism, spirit, and courage of all who serve in our nation's armed forces. As a remembrance to those who served in Vietnam, March 29th is proclaimed as Vietnam War Veterans Day, marking the day the last of the American combat troops were withdrawn from the battlefields of Vietnam in 1973. And here to accept, we have Lou Jones, who's the president of the Vietnam Veterans of America, Chapter 1041.
Good morning, and thank you all. I don't have a lot to say, except we greatly appreciate the support of the commission and the county at large, and that I'm speaking for all veterans in this county. I've spoken to other chapters and other parts of the state, and this county is by far above and beyond in their support of veterans, and we greatly appreciate it.
Bring the boys up for a photo. Yeah, bring them up.
Come on up, guys.
All right, we'll have everybody scoot in a little bit.
No kidding. I was thinking exactly the same thing.
All right, let's do a couple. 1, 2, 3.
And Commissioners, I'm not sure if you're aware or not, but we did move Veteran Services here into this building. So if you haven't had a chance to drop in, we've got a couple of new Veteran Services officers in there, but they're located in the old area of the snack bar.
Are they going to serve any food or anything in there? The salad.
Okay, so we have a couple public speaker forms this morning. If you have not filled out a speaker form, then please go ahead and do so, and we allow 3 minutes for public speakers. Our first speaker for today is Bob Zacchio, followed by Amy Pritchett.
This is the first time in history I probably have scripted something, so I'm going to try to keep it to under 2 minutes. But thank you, Commissioners, for giving me the opportunity to speak with you. We know that mental health and substance abuse issues are primary, chronic, progressive, familial, and often fatal. No time in history have we seen this type of exponential increase in mental health disorders and general mental health issues. The 5 stages of Maslow's hierarchy of needs best describes what our country is experiencing. So we're talking about physiological, right? The physical part, food, water, shelter, right? Those pieces, that's the base of it. Safety, which is security of the body, employment, resources. Love and belonging, which friendship, family, sexual intimacy, how we are with each other. Self-esteem, confidence, achievement, respect of others, and self-actualization, which is morality, creativity, spontaneity, problem solving, lack of prejudice, and acceptance of acts, right? Unfortunately, what we're doing these days is we're starting with self-actualization or believing that everybody should have all of those things. We do a great job in our community of really dealing with food, water, shelter, and then we're starting to really broach the issues of social, emotional issues that are going on in our community. Not just general mental health, but Vietnam veterans, talking about military all across the board. As a lifelong resident of Martin County and a professional in the mental health field, husband, father, and friend, it is truly time to put mental health of our communities at the forefront of action to address the issues at a high level. I'm truly thankful for George Stokas and our county commission for taking the first step in December to approve dollars to help address the dire social emotional situations in our county. I would also like to thank the United Way and Children's Services Council for stepping up and making mental health a priority. Since the summer, I, as a professional, along with my team, have experienced and intervened in 29 situations that resulted in Baker Act or Marchman Act. And if you want me to describe the difference, I'll tell you. The point here is that it's not slowed down. It has increased, and that's the trend locally and nationally. Now, as you look at the opportunity to put more CARES Act dollars into mental health, please use the lens that the issue has increased. More calls than ever are coming into the behavioral intervention units at the sheriff's office. Captain John Perez can attest to that. The adult and adolescent facilities are seeing record numbers, and unfortunately, we're losing the people of our county to the pandemic of suicide and drug overdose. Thank you. I thought I had it at 2 minutes. I apologize. If you got questions, I'd be willing to answer them. So, thank you all.
Thank you, Bob. Our next speaker is Amy Pritchett, followed by Colby Besaw.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'll be very brief. I've been following the South Fork Seniors Prom event that's taking place on March 28th. And as a community member, I'm just asking a general question. If they had to sign waivers, why weren't they made aware of that at the beginning instead of a week ago? That's all I wanted to know, because it makes no sense to me if the county contracted with them to occupy the building for that event, why weren't they told up front that waivers would have to be signed? Thank you.
Thank you. And our final public speaking forum this morning is Colby Besaw.
Good morning, Commissioners. Actually, I would like to move my comment to DEP 1.
Departmental number 1, Office of Budget Management.
Yeah,
Department number, okay.
Yeah, I didn't see an agenda amendment for Hope Heights, and Ed Campy helped me out.
Okay.
You could have yelled that from your seat instead of having to come all
Yes.
the way up on the crutches.
Okay, we will move you to departmental number 1 then.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Do you realize you may have to hang around for a while?
I've been in my house after the flood. I'm still in my house. I got nowhere to go.
Okay. Thanks.
I'll be here.
Oh, you got a Zoom comment, I think.
Got one public commenter on Zoom? Okay. They're unmuted. If you can hear us on Zoom, please state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Althea Redway.
Okay, you'll have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay, great, thanks. I'm requesting requirements to be implemented regarding burning of residential campfire or bonfire. I have been suffocating from the constant burning of fire from my neighbor, which causes my respiratory problem, and I ended up in the hospital in 2015.
Ma'am, can you speak up just a little bit?
Oh, okay. We were neighborly. I had a good rapport, and prior to my breathing problems, I asked him, to move his bonfire from beside my fence, but unfortunately, it became problematic. And his bonfire is about 3 feet away from the property line. This is creating a health problem due to the odor, the smoke, the ash, which is excessive and visible for many hours, and also daily, especially since the COVID. I have a hard time to comprehend why you do have laws for beach fires and not regulations for residential homes that are so close to each other. This is a terrible nightmare for me, and I'm really relying on you guys to do something because trying to resolve it on my own is impossible. Your Ordinance 742, Section 2141, states fire and similar hazards shall be enforced by Martin County Fire Prevention. I've reached out to them, but nothing, no success at all. I believe it's unfair to have laws and regulations for homeowners and residents who encounters neighbors that are so abusive, selfish, and inconsiderate. I'm asking and requesting that you please do something to assist me. I humbly request your urgency in resolving this matter for the safeguarding of one's health and life. I appreciate your time and assistance. Thanks.
Okay, and ma'am, before you leave us, can you state your name one more time for the record, please?
Althea Redway.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay, is that our only public commenter on Zoom? Okay, so that completes our public comment portion for today, and we will move to commissioner comment. Commissioner Jenkins?
Yes. District 3 and Hope Sound has the privilege of now having the Police Athletic League move their boxing program to the Banner Lake area in Hope Sound. And with that, they need some additional wrestling mats, which I agreed to pay $2,000 for 3 of them out of my district, 3 of the 6 out of my district funds. So I'm very proud to do that. And Noel's here in the audience. That's great. Also, the Hope Sound Scrub Preserve, we're finally having the ribbon cutting for that on Tuesday, March 30th at 11:30 a.m. And so we're looking forward to that. And that's all I got.
Thank you. Commissioner Smith?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a kind of an update. I've been on 2 Zoom conference calls, I guess, over the last 2 weeks with the EP on biosolids and the pilot projects that we asked the legislature last year to support us on to get funding dedicated in DEP to start working on new innovative technologies and to make sure that there were funds there enough to be able to start working on a pilot project somewhere in the state. Apparently Miami-Dade is moving forward on a pilot project of sorts with the state. Maybe a little bit different technology than what we've been looking at, but just the same, they are moving forward. In our conversation with the EP about doing what we were thinking about with a pilot project, excuse me, we are looking at a couple different ideas, whether it's an ag pilot project for biosolids or whether it's a regional project between perhaps us, St. Lucie, Indian River County, maybe Okeechobee County, or just doing it here locally in Martin County. So staff and I will be coming forward sooner than later with a little bit more specificity, but just want to let you know that that is working its way through the system. We are very supportive, and the board is very supportive of additional funds and continuing funds on the septic to sewer conversion projects that we're working on around the state, specifically here as well. So DEP has been super supportive, and they were very encouraged and encouraging during that conversation to make sure that we move this biosolids thing forward. So just to let you all know, that's kind of where we are with biosolids. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Campy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. Just a sad note and to offer on behalf of the board our condolences. Since our last meeting, we had lost a member of the Martin County team and family. Miss Dura Loving was a Martin County employee. She was an executive aide to Commissioner Fielding and then was promoted to run our contract negotiations. She has sadly passed away suddenly and untimely, and we just wanted to offer our condolences to her family and all of her friends and loved ones. It's a terrible loss for us as Martin County staff and commissioners, but also for our community, and we send our condolences and our prayers to her family in this difficult time. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hurd.
I'm set.
Okay, I would just offer one comment a speaker mentioned earlier regarding the prom. And I would just say that the young man, Eddie Diaz, that organized the event, I think is a phenomenal kid. And Bob Zacchio said something this morning during his public comments talking about the emotional and mental health needs of our young people. And I would just ask, everyone to keep in mind that how this pandemic has impacted our young people with scenarios like this, So folks that were critical of, this young man for organizing an event outside of, the realm of the school district, you think this is a once in a lifetime opportunity. And these kids have missed sports. They've missed ROTC. They've missed once in a lifetime events. So I just ask that, we keep in mind everything that Bob Zacchio said this morning, how that weaves in to, the mental health of our young people, and how some sort of normalcy, like this gentleman organizing this prom, and, that is what they need. So I appreciate that he has taken a leadership role, and I understand that people are somewhat critical, but I certainly see the need for our young people to have that sort of normalcy. And so I commend him for that. So, and that's all I have. And Ms. Krista.
You want to address the waiver issue?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yes, Commissioners, the comment that was made about the waivers, those have been in place for over a couple weeks now. We met with the individuals, and once we knew that they were selling tickets and that there was going to be a large number of individuals, that's when it rose to the level of an event, and the waivers were then implemented. So they've had them for more than a week.
They've had them 2 weeks yesterday, which gives them 3 weeks to have obtained it, and we also provided them shareable links so that Mr. Diaz would have the ability to share on social media to facilitate the ease of getting the waivers. Staff's been trying their best to assist. Thank you.
Okay, so that completes our comments for today, and we are going to move to board and committee appointments. We have Parks and Recreation Advisory Board appointments.
Probably the last one up there.
Donna Gordon for the record. This is the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board. Due to 2 members' terms expiring, plus that 2 members that are at large, and then 4 members that are commission district appointed. And the person that has, the 2 people that have the most votes for the 2 at large are Mrs. Jennifer Ahern and Mr. John Jack Matheson. And also confirm the appointments of districts 1, 2, 3, and 5 as listed on the screen.
Do you want 2 motions, Donna?
One is fine.
Madam Chair?
Yes, please.
I would move the 2 individuals that Donna presented as at large, and then the confirmation of the 4 districts that are up for confirmation.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Jenkins. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Donna. Okay, we are going to move on to public hearing number 1. Legislative public hearing to consider transmittal of comprehensive plan amendment CPA 21-03 CRA text amendments.
Good morning, members of the Board of County Commissioners. Irene Settlemyer, planner with the Growth Management Department. So, 18 months ago, Chapter 18, the community redevelopment element of the comp plan, was adopted by the board, and certain cleanup amendments to Chapter 18 were anticipated since inception that would be needed by the removal of the elimination of the mixed-use future land use overlays. So that this is that amendment. I also just want to point out that you received a public comment this morning, and there was a supplemental memo for this item, which just contained the staff presentation and the published ad. So the purpose of this amendment is to repeal superseded goals, objectives, and policies, and to locate all CRA-specific policies in Chapter 18, and to ensure consistency between the chapters. Whoops, whoop, 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 whoop. Sorry about that. So there are non-substantive edits made to these chapters 1, 2, 6, 8, 9, and 10. They are of the nature like referring to Chapter 18 rather than to a specific paragraph in a specific policy, or removing reference to the mixed-use future land use overlay. There's also amendments made to Chapter 4 that basically parallel amendments made to Chapter 18. For example, if substantive policies were moved to Chapter 18, there's no need to refer to the CRA-specific policies in Chapter 4. So now moving on to the policies that are being proposed for Chapter 18. So on the screen is the text that is proposed to be added to Chapter 18. It's modified from what exists in Chapter 4. This allows an accessory dwelling unit on a lot that's developed with a single-family dwelling or a townhouse. The policy in Chapter 4 applies to all urban residential development. We brought this forward into Chapter 18. The text you received did not have the or townhouse in the text, but that's necessary in order to be consistent with uses that were permitted prior to the adoption of Chapter 18 of the Comp Plan and Article 12 of the Land Development Regulations. So this objective, its existing text in Chapter 18 is modified to provide that the policies and standards specific to the CRAs that are for the marine, waterfront, commercial, future land use are set forth in Chapter 18, rather than referring back to Chapter 4. This text is from Chapter 4. It's added to 8, that the water-dependent and water-related uses are the priority for the marine, waterfront, commercial, future land use. The intent is to preserve marine waterfront uses, to accommodate marine and marine resort uses, and to encourage public access to the shoreline. The express mention of public access to the shoreline is new, but it's based on the foundation of the fact that restaurants are permitted, hotels are permitted, so we're making it clear that it's the public access that we're seeking.
Ms. Settlemeyer, can you pause? Commissioner Smith has a question.
Thank you.
All right. Is it okay if we interrupt now, or do you want to go through the whole presentation?
Whatever your preference is, sir.
Okay, so just so I'm clear or we are clear, so access to the public waterfront. So that means docks, that means a boardwalk system or anything that has waterfront edge to it, to the upland or whatever you want to call the next tier.
Well, it might vary site to site. I mean, some of the sites may have boardwalks. Some may still have natural beach.
I guess the only thing I'm asking, the word shoreline, to me is more like beach, not a hardened surface, like not a, shoreline means a more natural something.
Okay.
And shoreline's fine, but does shoreline also include docks,
That was the intent.
bulkheads, whatever is that connection between the waterfront and the actual surface?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Commissioner, and that is the intent, so we will look at the,
Because that's like a real Jersey kind of reference, shoreline?
we have a shoreline.
No, I'm okay with that. I mean, that the first thing that comes to mind when I hear that word is the Jersey Shore, so it's like shoreline. Anyway, so as long as that is defined somewhere, or if we need to add some other word that just makes sure we include anything that's connected to the water, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Thank you.
Clyde.
Commissioner, Clyde Doolin, for the record. As Irene said, it is intended to mean both, at all forms of access, all types of shoreline.
Okay, can I go one step further? So 5 years from now, when somebody looks at that and reads that, is that clear? I mean, is shoreline somewhere is described as to what shoreline means?
I'm sure we can work on that and improve on it. Irene's making note of it. I think Irene may have mentioned already, this is the transmittal hearing for this text amendment. And the next item will be in the first reading on Article 12. This will all be coming back to you tentatively in May. So we can continue to work on this and wordsmith it.
Okay, thank you.
Wordsmith it. Nice.
Ah.
Nice job, Clyde, that was good. You get points.
Okay, Irene, continue on.
This policy, again, is bringing text from Chapter 4 into Chapter 18, allowing mixed-use development within the marine waterfront commercial future land use designation is not new policy. It's been in effect since the mixed-use policies were adopted by the board in mid-2000s. And again, the emphasis on public access, now here I used waterfront. Public access to the waterfront shall be a primary component of mixed-use development. Again, that's founded on the restaurants and hotels and motels that are permitted in that future land use designation.
So Irene,
We'll look at those words.
so can we choose one
Yes.
or the other?
Yes.
So it's
It's only now that I'm realizing we use two different words, we will address that.
And in the mixed use, does mixed use allow for residential?
Yes.
Okay.
And to be called mixed use, it generally it requires some commercial and some residential.
Okay. Thank you.
Again, policies brought forward from Chapter 4 with regard to some of the basic development standards, residential density not exceeding 10 units an acre, hotel density 20 units an acre, minimum open space 20%. That's all what applies county-wide in the marine waterfront commercial future land use designation. One change is that in Chapter 4, the policy distinguishes between water-dependent uses and water-related uses. And this 40-foot height is what applies to water-dependent uses. We are proposing one building height standard that will apply regardless of the use, whether it's water-dependent or water-related.
Irene, I'm sorry. In city center, in that category, what is the open space requirement
20%.
for all of it?
Well, yes, core, yes.
Well, it's not core, is it? It's really city center?
There's a CRA Center Future Land Use designation, yes.
And what
CRA
it,
Center Future Land Use requires 20% open space.
okay, and so this will be in city center, correct? Because all that's surrounding it is the city center?
So the Marine Waterfront Commercial Future Land Use designation has been retained in the CRAs. If you recall, when we amended the future land use maps between 2019 and 2020, we retained the industrial future land use designation, the 3 institutional future land use designations, and the marine waterfront commercial future land use designation. So it will not be CRA center or CRA neighborhood, it's marine waterfront commercial future land use.
If I may, the two will be in close proximity to each other, the CRA Center and the commercial waterfront future land use. And so having the same open space and the same building height requirement in both the commercial waterfront and the CRA Center will allow for continuity and comparable development types.
Okay, so what I'm curious about and where this is going to apply and where this is going to make a difference, good or bad, I think, one way or the other. In Rio, you have a single landowner that owns both. It will either be the commercial waterfront or whatever, industrial or city center. So if a project is coming through and now you're going to have 2 or 3 choices of, I say choices, applications of land use, will that make the most sense for the CRA? Or having, I mean, I thought generally speaking, when we were working on this and going through all this, that the idea was to consolidate as much as possible. I mean, I understand keeping the industrial because we have industrial area and stuff. If we had gone back and redone this back to the beginning and we decided to do all this back in the beginning, would we have kept it city center through the conversation, or would we have pulled it out separately as we're doing? Because if a use, if somebody, as in this case, has acquired all of that land, uses are going to blend from, on a piece of property, perhaps from one to another land use.
The uses are generally in the marine waterfront commercial future land use and the CRA center future land use. The uses, permitted uses, and the development standards are very consistent. The residential density changes. In the marine waterfront commercial, only 10 dwelling units per acre is permitted, whereas in CRA center, 15 dwelling units an acre are permitted. You'll see later in my presentation that we are proposing to permit density blending in the CRA. We're not proposing to change any of the future land use maps by this amendment. We're just proposing amendments to the text of the comp plan. So the same result. I mean, the CRA center, you know, the marine waterfront commercial, it was determined early on that there was a unique future land use designation, and that it was different than some other areas of CRA center. So it was a deliberate policy choice, we believe.
Yeah, no, I understand. Now that we're moving forward and we have a direct application of somebody doing something, this is where you start to see things bumping into each other. And what I'm trying to hope that what we're accomplishing here today, or moving through anyway, is to eliminate that bumping into each other, if that's possible.
Right, so we propose a density blending policy that would eliminate one of the ways those two future land uses are distinguished.
Okay.
And another policy as well.
Thank you.
So this is the no net loss of the marine service areas. So the no net loss policy for the marine service areas was adopted in 2005 by the board. And that policy, when adopted in 2005, provided that a landowner may petition to amend the boundaries of a marine service area, and that a petition to amend the boundaries of the marine service area shall at a minimum demonstrate one of these 3 factors. So the proposal here is just bringing that text forward from Chapter 4 into Chapter 18 and providing that this is a policy that we're recommending for the CRAs only. So I said earlier that the uses are similar in CRA Center and CRA Center and Marine Waterfront Commercial Future Land Use. The marine service areas currently are only in the Marine Waterfront Commercial Future Land Use. And marine service areas cannot be converted to permanent residential use, and except upon a petition by the landowner to the Board of County Commissioners and demonstration of one of those factors. The chapter as it reads now in the text as it reads now in Chapter 4 provides that land development regulations must be adopted to effectuate this policy, and you will see in the next presentation on Article 12 that we have proposed text in the land development regulations which will enable this policy to be effectuated.
Irene, Commissioner Smith has a question.
Yes.
So this is all kind of like a big build-up to the issue, I think. So in Rio, we have two marinas in Rio, we have two commercial marinas.
Yes.
That historically, probably for the last 20 years, have been completely underutilized. They're not really operating at their fullest capacity, nor were they operating at a point where the public did have access to the waterfront to marine use. And so the weird thing about why we did what we did back in 2005 was to prevent the conversion of marinas into residential homes, which we were seeing down in South County around County Line. There were a whole bunch of little itty-bitty marinas that were being bought up, torn down, and turned into a single-family residence, therefore limiting public access to the water, if you will, through a commercial marina. Since then, a lot has changed. Even in South County, we have an enormous boat barn storage facility that probably has 800 slips in it, I imagine, way more than the county, the state would have ever permitted on the water or in a marina use. You would never get that big a marina down there. But we have increased marina storage capacity significantly. Palm City, well, not Palm City, on the edge of Palm City going over the Palm City Bridge, same thing. There was a whole new boat barn built there, and additional capacity was added. My quandary with this thing with the CRA, you have these underutilized marine facilities that really aren't giving us the best access to the public that we could have. And so this policy almost sort of holds that back and says, unless you can do these things or meet this test or petition the board and get approval, you're kind of out of luck on the residential side. If residential or mixed use were added to those two marina waterfront sites in Rio, you would significantly increase the public access to the water. Because as it is right now, there's very little access. Because the money to rebuild those marinas or those dock areas obviously hasn't kept up with what people might do or want to use on those properties. And so now we have a project that is coming before us that says, look, we've acquired all of that land from there, most of it, up to 707, and we're doing a very comprehensive master plan for downtown Rio. So how do we ensure and make sure that those shoreline or waterfront access points are public by policy or whatever, but also that they're used, that they're actively used by marine access. And you know, kind of a good way to look at that is downtown Stewart with their marina that they have next to Old Roosevelt Bridge. It's not all completely public access, but you have a boardwalk system that runs down along the full length of Sailor's Return. The public very much uses that and engages in that, and you have access to it. Whereas before that wasn't as accessible as it would have been back when it was raised or back even 30 years ago. So I know it's a long-winded kind of thing to get to, but my concern with bringing this policy language into the CRA is that it may hold back the ability to further use the commercial waterfront that we really would like to see happen.
So when we may retain the marine waterfront commercial future land use in Rio, in Port Salerno, and in Jensen Beach, when the future land use maps are amended. And when the regulation...
Irene, can you speak into the microphone, please?
Oh, beg your pardon. Maybe the first time in my life I've been told to speak up. So when we... So that's the comp plan. The future land use map retained the marine waterfront commercial future land use. In Article 12 of the land development regulations, we included regulating plans for each of the CRAs. And those regulating plans mapped the marine service areas that were identified back in 2005. So what we're trying to provide here is the mechanism that was established by the board in 2005 that permits a landowner to petition the board to modify those boundaries. And when you see the Article 12, the proposed Article 12 land development regulations and the text addressing this policy, that it's tied with a site plan. So how do we assure when the boundaries are changed or moved, how do we assure that public access is maintained? It will be a decision by the Board of County Commissioners in the context of reviewing a site plan for the same property. So that's what the proposal is.
If I could add, Commissioners, Irene, could you flip to the next slide? I think to respond to you directly, Commissioner, staff has proposed some language, and that's not it. Maybe it's the next one with the optional text?
That was the optional text.
I'm sorry, I read it too quickly. Staff has proposed some additional language that's not found in Chapter 4, and we've proposed it for Chapter 18. It's intended to address this concern that you've expressed, and that it would allow the marine service area to be relocated to two other future land use designations besides commercial waterfront. It would be allowed to be relocated to industrial or to CRA center future land use designations, and it would be done through the process Irene described in Article 12, and through a site plan and through board review and approval. Now, this is one policy option. We offer it up to make it as flexible as we think possible while staying within the bounds of the existing policies that the board established. If you would like to go further than this, or if you would like to give us additional direction on this language, we'd be happy to consider it either now or at a future date between now and, say, adoption.
I guess, Clyde and Irene, what I'm trying to suggest. The Regional Planning Council and you all worked for almost 2 years to simplify and straighten up and not tie back into other chapters of the comp plan. My concern is, and I understand why we probably didn't do it at the time. My concern is that, and it's going to sound critical, but we love to make things complicated. And we love to have, but you could do it for this, or you could do it for that, but you got to petition this, or you got, it's like, can we get past that? And you know, my preference is I'd remove it completely, honestly. I think it would simplify it. I think if city center was the designation, you'd have one set of standards, one set of rules. There wouldn't be crossing back and forth again. Or if you got to keep marine, industrial land use, fine, but mirror the city center zoning and regulations, but don't have this tying back that you got to move density, you got to move this, or you got to buy another piece of property in the CRA, because in the plan that you're presenting, not you, the applicant is presenting, it doesn't fit. So now we got to fit it in someplace that it doesn't make sense, or you know, just because that's what the various options say. That's what I'm trying to get away from. Either the site plan makes sense and it's what the board, if we could get there, accepts and says, yeah, this is good for Rio and Rio is good with it. I'd much rather see us go that way than trying to overly complicate it. And I appreciate what you're trying to do. And I sat here when we did that protection plan because things were going away very quickly. This doesn't, I mean, I think in this case, certainly in Rio, this doesn't take away commercial waterfront access. I think it actually enhances it. And that's my concern, that we have an opportunity to enhance and do something really special on the waterfront. And I just don't want to overly complicate it if that's what this does. And to me, I kind of get the sense that that's what it does. I wouldn't, me personally, I wouldn't want to be an applicant trying to go through this and trying to make it work. If all the other things I was trying to accomplish, and then I get hung up on the waterfront on this, yes, I'm sorry.
Ms. Story.
Commissioners, I want to point out, I want to make a comment to you regarding the process we're in today. This is a legislative public hearing to consider a text amendment to consider broad policies. It is very factual that because of a current project moving through the process, it has highlighted and given staff an opportunity to evaluate policies and procedures in that light. And it's certainly, this is not any criticism of, it's good to talk about real life examples, but ultimately we want to get back to the bigger picture that this is policy choices related to the county as a whole, and certainly the implications on a project can be anecdotally considered, but it is of course a policy decision that's irregardless of any particular project. And I know you don't love me saying that, Commissioner Smith, and I appreciate it, but my role is to make sure the board is reviewing this and considering it in the appropriate context.
So
I've
all
done
the
my
reason
thing.
all the reason why I didn't use the name of a project or anyone specific, other than in the Mario CRA, we have a project that is specific. But if my opinion is if we don't fix this now, in the future, for any project that comes through the system that is involved in any of our waterfront or shoreline CRA areas, it'll be problematic.
Commissioner Smith, may I respond? One of the issues with regard to the Marine Service area that the only prohibition that comes with the Marine Service area designation is permanent residential housing. The Marine Service area doesn't prevent the development of hotels or motels or restaurants or any of the other uses that might bring the public to the waterfront. It just prohibits permanent residential housing. So it is an important tool for the county, but of course that will be a decision of the board.
But if you wanted to have permanent residential housing, you couldn't.
On a Marine Service area unless you were able to relocate the Marine Service area.
And then again, that's where I get into the complexity of this thing, that if I were a project in one of our CRAs and I were being asked to accommodate that and move that, here I'm looking at a project that I'm going to spend X amount of dollars on a significantly large piece of a CRA, any CRA. And now you're throwing this little monkey wrench in, and that's why when I asked those earlier questions about, the line between city center and marine, the blending, the ability to blend, are you able to bring permanent residential in with your blending or not?
Not onto.
Can I jump in here, please? Thank you. So, Commissioners, what your staff has proposed to you is taking the language that currently exists in Chapter 4 regarding the Marine Service areas and bringing it forward into Chapter 18. You have this is a text amendment that you all may provide comments to, and you may direct a change in that policy regarding the Marine Service areas that currently exist in Chapter 4, specific to the CRAs, from allowing different uses, allowing some other process. So this is your opportunity for that policy choice related to specifically Chapter 18 in the CRA. So that, your staff is in an abundance of caution, and their direction is to assume that the text as it currently exists is appropriate, but you have an opportunity for your CRA to do something different.
Which is where I'm trying to get to, and I understand the rules and I understand why we're here. But if you don't talk through it, I don't get to talk to the other four ever, other than here.
One more thing, if I may. So, Commissioner, your comment about permanent residential is not allowed currently.
But only because we brought in the language from Chapter 4 into Chapter 18 that said we brought in the Marine Service Area, whatever that language was. Had that language not been brought in, Chapter 18 would have sat by itself. There would have been no reference to it in the commercial waterfront area, and we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Except now you have an opportunity.
To remove it, which is why I'm talking through it, and you keep wanting not to let me do that.
Apologize.
Okay.
So that my point of this is, my hope or recommendation or thought is that we remove the reference to the commercial service area, whatever, in Chapter 18 altogether. And tell me if I'm wrong, all of you. If you remove it and Chapter 18 stands on its own, then city center, if that's what it was redesignated as, or marine service area, would only be whatever was in Chapter 18 that would apply to it.
Only Chapter 18 would apply, and you'd be able to do residential in either the commercial waterfront future land use or in the CRA Center future land use designation.
So that would be my choice. And I understand what you're all saying. That
I hear what you're saying, Commissioner Smith, but I would want to afford some kind of protections of those marine services industries so that they're not all replaced by waterfront residential.
Absolutely.
And maybe you have some protections in there, but there might be working boatyards that don't necessarily have public access. Those to me are still valuable to our marine services area. So I would still want to see that retain protections for those kind of industry and businesses.
I agree 100%. My problem is the complexity at which that amendment we did makes it overly complicated to do that. Retaining marine service area and having storage or having a place to work on boats is great. On the waterfront, not having any access to it from residential, I think holds back the ability to further use those marinas the way you'd like to use them, because right now they're completely underutilized. Anyway, enough. Sorry.
Go ahead, Irene.
So this is a policy providing for the adoption of land development regulations for the marine waterfront commercial future land use in Chapter 18. It's text brought forward from Chapter 4. This paragraph A is currently in Chapter 18. This text here, paragraph B, is currently in Chapter 4. C, only the first sentence is new. That recognizes that the marine service areas are identified in the 3 CRAs that have them on the regulating plan. The second and third sentences there are directly out of Chapter 4, and paragraph D is existing text in Chapter 18. It only removes reference to Chapter 4. It's bringing all the policies that will apply to the marine waterfront commercial future land use designation in the CRAs into Chapter 18. This is just a simple bar graph to put this discussion in some context. The blue bar is the total acreage of the marine waterfront commercial future land use. So in the county, there are some 362 acres of marine waterfront commercial future land use. And in the county, there are something less than 150. I think 142 acres. 140 acres of marine service area. So of those totals in the CRA, some 14% of the marine waterfront commercial future land use is in the CRAs, and some 14% of the marine service area is in the CRA. So we are talking about a relatively small subset of the marine waterfront commercial future land use designation and a small subset of the marine service areas. So now I'll be moving on to the industrial future land use. So this is existing text brought forward from Chapter 4, so that in Chapter 18 we will not be referencing Chapter 4, but the text will exist in Chapter 18. Only the sentence highlighted in blue is new text, recognizing that the areas have both limited impact and extensive impact industries in the CRAs. This is existing text. Again, there's mixed use development is currently permitted in the CRAs in the industrial future land use designation. The change would be that in Chapter 4, the industrial future land use designation distinguishes between land zoned for extensive impact industries and land zoned for limited impact industries with regard to building coverage and maximum height. So we are proposing one building coverage standard and one building height standard for industrial future land use in the CRAs. The 20% open space is what applies to the industrial future land use throughout the county. So this is existing text. It's just modified to provide that there will be an industrial subdistrict or subdistricts adopted for each CRA. The land development regulations will detail the permitted uses, building height and size, etc., rather than referring to the zoning districts that exist in Article 3 and the policies that exist in Chapter 4. This is a new policy intended to acknowledge that some of the industrial future land use areas in the CRAs are different than industrial areas outside the CRAs. There is multiple ownership of small parcels. Some of the property is underutilized, tends to be dominated by surface parking or surface storage. And these are not for example, the 7Js with 280 acres under one owner, or Sands Commerce Park, and so that perhaps some special policies may be needed to help maintain their economic vigor. So this is the density blending policy that was referred to earlier. So currently in Chapter 4, density blending is permitted when someone proposes a planned unit development. So staff believes that, given the context of the redevelopment zoning districts with small lots, multiple ownership, and some of the points that Commissioner Smith was raising, that allowing someone to blend the densities when more than one future land use designation applies to their property makes sense. It doesn't increase the overall density that's permitted. It doesn't increase the number of dwelling units that are permitted, but it allows the units to be placed on the land irregardless of the future land use boundary. And that concludes my presentation. The staff recommendation is that the board approve transmittal of CPA 2103, the CRA text amendments to the State Land Planning Agency and other state and regional reviewing agencies. And of course, if the board wishes to direct staff to modify any of those policies before transmittal, that should be included in your motion. Thank you for your attention, and I'm glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Irene. Commissioner Hurd.
Yeah, I'm just going to move through the agenda item consecutively, but first I want to address the density blending on 2 or more future land use designations. So how do you density transition? How do you enforce compatibility with neighboring uses?
In the community redevelopment areas, density transition does not apply.
Okay, so we're just going to dismiss that. It's no longer relevant in the CRAs. Okay. Next is, I'm on page 149. CRAs, let's see, marine waterfront commercial shall have a residential density not exceeding 10 units per acre and a hotel motel density not exceeding 20 units per acre. That is just in the CRAs?
That is the existing policy for that future land use designation throughout the county. But yes, this would apply in the CRAs, but that is what applies countywide for that future land use designation.
Okay, I am on page 150, and this is the changing the boundaries of a marine service area. You may change it to maybe reestablished on land with the marine waterfront commercial, industrial, or CRA future land use designation.
That is a policy option that staff is offering for the board's consideration if they wish to allow more flexibility to petitions to change the boundaries. The local planning agency did consider this policy and they recommended that the board include this policy, but that will be up to your determination whether to allow marine service areas to be established on the CRA center future land use designation or the industrial future land use designation.
Industrial within that CRA or industrial anywhere?
It doesn't say, and that could be a call of the board whether we would let it be available anywhere. You know, one of the thoughts that I looked back at some of the conversation that occurred in 2005 when there was a very, as you know, more than I, in-depth conversation on these matters. And a lot of marine service uses are currently operating in our industrial parks, boat builders and navigation systems and all kinds of things. You're right, some marine service uses cannot be located off the water. If you're trying to run a charter fishing boat or if you're trying to offer scenic tours of the river, you need to be on the water. But some marine service uses can be located elsewhere.
The CRA that has the potential to have the most impact from the changes that are being proposed is Port Salerno. And Port Salerno, of all of the CRAs, does have working waterfront. And it's incredibly important, and it's historic, and we're preserving an historic neighborhood, a residential neighborhood that's always had these boat or water dependent businesses. So that would some of these proposals would absolutely destroy the character of Port Salerno, and also the trend now, which is I don't see any signs of it abating, and it's an unusual trend, but nevertheless it's real, and that is for boats are getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and the trend right now is 60-foot boats with 4 or 5 outboard engines on them. These boats, I see them every day, are not trailerable. When they go to service, they are going to have to go to a water-dependent parcel. You cannot move, you cannot service these boats in an industrial site that's not on the water. You can build, Jim Smith can build, a 100-foot boat on an industrial site. It'll take him 2 years to do it, but he only has to move it once to the water in order to launch it. So this proposal to be able to give flexibility so that we can move marine water-dependent services to dry land is just it's not feasible, it's not workable. And also I don't want these CRAs to turn into Delray Beach. I don't want to be Delray Beach. I don't ever want to be Delray Beach in any of my CRAs. I want them to retain their character. And now I'm on page 151. The industrial, which allows residential densities of up to 15 units per acre. Does industrial anyplace else allow any residential units?
In the CRAs, since the adoption of the mixed-use overlays in the mid-2000s, industrial was permitted to have mixed use, and in the current policies, residential is permitted on industrial future land use only if it's a part of a mixed-use project. So in the land development regulations, for example, Port Salerno Industrial Park, that area does not permit residential, but the Rio and Golden Gate industrial areas and Old Palm City CRAs would permit residential as a part of a mixed-use future land use, as part of a mixed-use development. And that's a continuation of existing policy.
Okay, but we have prohibited residential uses elsewhere in the county because we recognize that they're inherently incompatible.
And the types of dwellings that we are permitting in the LDRs also limits that, like maybe to live work units. And I hear what you're saying.
On page 160, density calculation in the CRAs, the gross land area may include 1/2 of any right-of-way adjoining the site. Is that possible anyplace else in the county that we allow right-of-way, county-owned right-of-way to be used to calculate density?
When streets are when it's what we call a greenfield development, an area that has not been developed before, the total site area includes the land that will be dedicated to roads. So the total number of units and the total density applies to the total site area. And so this policy is only intended to try to equalize the playing field between infill development and redevelopment and greenfield sites for purposes of calculating density.
Commissioner, if I may add to that, this is a policy that was adopted into Chapter 18 previously, and this is just restating of it as part of this paragraph.
Okay, and I'm looking on page 179, and it's talking about keeping urban services, urban development in urban areas, and talking about the leapfrog, how detrimental leapfrog development is. And I wondered where was this analysis when we considered the Publix out on Canner and Pratt Whitney Road, and also the industrial portion that leapfrogs over by the 96th and Canner, and the single-family development that was approved by South Fork High School. I mean,
Commissioner, if I may, those are all three areas that are in the outer edges of the primary urban service district or in the secondary urban service district. And the policies here in Chapter 18 will only be applicable to the CRAs. And so we really don't see a problem with leapfrog development happening in our CRAs. They're our core urban areas.
Okay. Page 183, active residential development tracking system. Are we doing this with Newfield?
I'm sorry, Commissioner, Newfield is not in a CRA. It's outside, it's in the primary urban service district.
Okay.
Okay.
So are we doing, what sort of active residential development tracking are we doing? We're doing them only in the CRAs?
No, this is, Commissioner, this is existing text in background for Chapter 4. I believe we're in Chapter 4 of the comp plan, and because amendments are proposed to Chapter 4 as well, you received the whole chapter.
Okay, this made me review the information that was in here, and it was particularly interesting, the information about residential capacity for unincorporated Martin County, and about there's a 10-year capacity and 15-year capacity. Just wondering when the last evaluations were done.
2019.
Okay. And now I'm on page 189, and this is just for my education. I'm on 2C. The maximum intensities of uses on the subject property contained within a building or buildings shall not exceed 1,600,000 square feet. Which parcel is this?
This is this entire section is a sub-area policy. It's existing text in Chapter 4. It's referring to a parcel that's in the outer edges of the primary urban service district, and a recent amendment that you just adopted and just became effective has modified this text. So this is background information from Chapter 4 that has already been modified.
Okay, it just used a parcel number, so I was unclear about what parcel it was. And then on page 251, it's about, I'm looking at J and at K, and this is about ag tech, and it says that in order to protect the allocation of the industrial land base, Martin County may initiate an amendment to remove the ag tech land use if the owner has not achieved a PUD approval for an initial phase of development within 5 years of the effective date of the amendment. Has that been done?
The applicant in that case did establish a PUD, and there has also been an amendment to that text that was adopted recently.
Okay, well, later, let's meet privately and discuss this.
Certainly.
Thanks. Those are the questions that I have.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Smith?
So some interesting points raised, which further maybe help the discussion, I guess. Let's start with Port Salerno. For those of us that were here, the commercial working waterfront that we worked for years to protect and work with the Port Salerno Dock Authority to make sure that the commercial working waterfront would stay, and that the Sarah, I believe we have what's the agreement we have with the Port Salerno commercial fishermen? It's a lease. We have a lease with them.
Yes, we have a lease agreement with them. They're on county property.
Right, but that we established that lease, and that took
Absolutely.
quite some time
Yes.
to put together. And the essence of all that was, in fact, from my perspective, because I supported it, was to protect the commercial working waterfront. And I think we actually got a separate designation from the state at the time. I don't know if they still have it, but there was a special designation of commercial working waterfront that we applied for and got in Port Salerno on the where the dock authority is located. Interestingly enough, the comments made about that and the residential completely adjacent to the commercial working waterfront was just supported that that's a good idea because that historic residential neighborhood completely adjacent to the street and then to the commercial working waterfront is residential next to waterfront, commercial waterfront. And it has the inference is that it is protected and that we want to protect that. And so part of my discussion is if you were to put residential or be allowed to put residential into commercial waterfront service area, you might be enhancing it further as Port Salerno has enhanced it all these years versus holding it back and keeping it from being protected, actually. The other inference was working waterfront as a whole and the importance of it. Completely wholeheartedly agree. Again, back years ago when Hinckley purchased the old marina over in Rocky Point, there was a huge battle over the continuation and the expansion of commercial working waterfront of that historic, back to the 50s, marina site. I was one of those that worked to make sure that that was protected and that it was existing to be able to expand and to be able to service boats that both Hinckley make, and this is, I believe, their service yard for all of the southern portion of the United States. By the actions we took, not only did we protect commercial working waterfront with residential immediately adjacent to it that came in after the marina was built back in the 50s, because that wasn't there. The marina was there first. Again, we have enhanced the value of that whole area because those two uses coexist with each other and have been supportive of each other for decades. And so as we're thinking about how commercial working waterfront exists with residential, you have two prime examples in Port Salerno of both how we protected it, but also how it has historically supported each other. And so if we are looking to move in that direction, we're only sort of maybe implementing what historically has been for decades certainly in Port Salerno. So I think there is room, and I think, as was suggested earlier, the importance of having residential adjacent is certainly something we ought to figure out how we do, or at least give the option to be able to do in any of our CRAs on the working waterfront or non-working waterfront. I mean, one of our commercial properties certainly in Rio has the potential to be, I suppose, working waterfront or just marina. It can probably exist either way. The other historically has had a service yard that probably will continue on, but also has the potential to bring residential in to support its use. So anyway, it was great that example was brought up in Port Salerno, because I think that's a perfect explanation of how those two uses can coexist. There may be needed language, Irene, that we need to figure out how that works and how both residential and working waterfront can coexist. And maybe there needs to be some definition of what exists today and how do we. So if there, for instance, let's say there's 35 slips in a piece of working waterfront. How do those 35 slips get protected? I think in the case of one or two of our marinas, there probably could be more slips if it were redeveloped. And then on the working waterfront side, meaning if you were to haul a boat out and work on a boat in a marina setting, like most of our marinas have, how do we address that, and how do we make sure that application, as Commissioner Hetherington said, we don't want to lose that. We don't want to lose the ability to have that working side of the thing equated, because Commissioner Hurd's absolutely right. I mean, they're these larger boats that are being built with 4 or 5 motors on the back, they obviously are trailered because you see them on 95, but on the daily application of getting one worked on or serviced, you're not going to haul one out in Port Salerno and move it to Commerce Park and have it serviced. That's just not a practical application. So, thank you.
Clyde.
Thank you. I think we would like to offer another option if it's the pleasure, meets the needs of the pleasure of the board. We can remove the marine service area language from Chapter 18 and leave it only in Chapter 4 and leave it only applicable to the commercial waterfront future land use designation outside the CRAs. As Irene is showing you on the screen, the blue areas are showing you the only commercial waterfront future land use in the Rio area. And she's showing you, I think, the Jensen area, which has and you can see there's all the blue there is commercial waterfront, and only the part with hatching has the marine service area. And I believe she had a Port Salerno map up a minute ago that showed just the marine service area in Port Salerno, which is not all of the commercial waterfront or marine service area in the Manatee Pocket. So if that's the pleasure of the board, we can just not include the marine service area language. However, we will also need to come back at a future date and take the hatching off of these maps through a separate amendment.
Go ahead.
So Clyde, I think what would be helpful, and maybe the description I just tried to walk through, if you were to do that and we were to redefine the commercial waterfront areas in our 3 CRAs that have waterfront designations, can you create language that is specific to those uses or to those areas in those three that apply to the CRA, that recognize the idea that they have to have public access, because that's super important. There needs to be, especially in Port Salerno, the protection and the continuation of the commercial working waterfront area. I mean, the commercial dock authority, which I believe we only have one, correct? And that marine service, existing marine service areas are identified as a use that needs to be built into or acknowledged in a PUD or in a project, in a site plan if it's brought forward to us.
We can certainly try to revisit this language. Another option might be to leave the marine service area language in the text, but then revise the maps to take the hatching off of specific parcels in the CRAs, so that it affects fewer parcels. But at this point, Commissioners, we have a requesting that it be transmitted, so I would ask if we could have a vote, but if you wish to, direct us to go back and come back to you at another date, we can revise this language.
Well, can't we transmit with revised language?
We can revise language at your direction right now and then transmit, yes.
And in that transmittal process and in the review process and when it comes back to us, can we not, if the board agrees to do so, can we not adopt language that you all put together between now and then?
Yes.
That would further define how we protect the commercial waterfront aspect in a CRA, allow for residential to be compatible, but some kind of a language that adamantly makes it public. You protect sort of the idea of having commercial working waterfront, and you don't limit that use. I mean, I can think of literally dozens and dozens of commercial waterfronts that have the coexistence of both uses and public access. And there just seems to be a way that we ought to be able to draft or create language that supports that ability to do that. Anyway, thanks. I'm done.
Okay, Commissioner Hurd.
Yeah, just for clarification, the Hinckley controversy was about setbacks. It was about building setbacks. It was about the neighborhood's fear that a huge industrial building could be built on the site. And the setbacks were reduced by the commission majority at that time. That was the fear, that was the controversy about Hinckley. And I still have this serious reservation about the proposed changes as they might impact Port Salerno. We see with the seafood festival how those uses can become so incompatible so fast, and I'm just very fearful of the ability of creating even more flexibility for more conversion, because I don't think that it will come to a good end.
Okay, we are nearing our time for a closed captioning break, so what's the pleasure of the board on this item?
I'd see Mr. Smith needs to craft a
Okay, so
motion.
I'll try. Madam Chair, I would move that we transmit this item, and that we, and please, Clyde, all of you, tell me wordsmithing-wise if I need a different thing, that we transmit, that we propose removing the
Marine service area.
marine service area language from Chapter 18, craft language between now and return of review by the state that would further define how residential, commercial marine, working waterfront can coexist.
Yes, thank you.
Second.
Then the state doesn't have anything to review. if you're going to say, here, we're going to transmit this, but we're going to change it in between the time that we transmit and adopt. So it's going to be a completely different amendment, but you're not going to know because we don't know yet.
Yeah, Commissioner, I guess you're directing that to me.
Yeah.
We can, in fact, make changes between transmittal and adoption. We just have to notify the state of it when we do send back the adoption package. And I think what Commissioner Smith is talking about is a little more fine-tuning on language that Irene has already showed you in your presentation that talked about the importance of providing public access to the waterfront.
Which, can I just add one more thing? Which, interestingly enough, in 3 of those designations, or 3 of those areas in 2 of our CRAs have no public access today. They're privately owned parcels with private marinas that are fenced off and gated to the public. So this idea that this would move that in the direction of having public access, I think is a benefit to us.
Marcella, is this for this item? Yes? Okay. Okay, we have now a motion on the floor by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Jenkins. We have a request for public comment from Marcella Cambler.
Thank you, Marcella Camblor, for the record. I appreciate staff's proposed amendment that will allow us to further redevelopment of the CRAs. I am here as someone that has worked on the multiple master plans and redevelopment plans and zoning changes of many of the CRAs over the years. One of the things that we never addressed in all of the CRAs, as has been made evident today, was that overlay for various reasons. I mean, every little one of the changes we made furthered the community's vision a little more, but this was an item that remained pending. And so I appreciate the language with the modifications that are being proposed by Commissioner Smith. I am representing also the plan, the project that is coming forward in Rio. And I can tell you that in looking at this, some of these things showed up because we believe that with this last series of land use and zoning amendments, the community's vision was going to be able to be implemented as proposed by the community, and it turned out that it wasn't, and it triggered a number of amendments. This is not the only project that triggered that. In my experience, the Marine Service area, and I hear the concerns of protecting the working waterfront, doesn't totally protect the working waterfront. The only thing it does is it says you can't bring multifamily residential to it. You could bring a hotel that is totally private. You could bring a use that is totally private. You could bring an office building that has private waterfront. So I think that this addition of the public notion that will obviously come to staff and to you to be approved is a good compromise. And again, it's just the clarification that I think the hatch or the Marine Services area is specifically excluding one use and not necessarily protecting the public accessibility to the waterfront, nor guaranteeing that it will be working waterfront either. So if you guys can work on the language that brings the certainty of the public waterfront and yet maybe eliminates from some of the, I think you guys know what you have to do. But anyways, supporting the motion, thank you.
Thank you, Marcella. Okay, Ms. Story, was this an old light? Okay, we have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Smith, seconded by Commissioner Jenkins. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Opposed.
Motion carries 4-1 with Commissioner Hurd dissenting. We are going to now take our closed captioning 10:30 break. It's 10:40 now. We will come back at 10:50, and we are going to take requests and presentations at that time from the Police Athletic League, and then we'll continue on with public hearing number 2. You're on. Okay. Welcome back to our March 23rd County Commission meeting. And we are going to skip around so we have some members of the public. Commissioner Smith, do you have your light on? Do you have a question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If possible, I have to leave at 11:30, and I know that you want to just go through the agenda, which is fine. If we can, anyway, I have to leave at 11:30, so if there are some on here I'd love to be part of the conversation, but maybe we won't make it by 11:30, so we'll just kind of go along and do what you got to do.
Will you be back before lunch, or you'll be back after lunch?
I'll be back after lunch.
Okay, so there are particular items that you definitely want to participate in?
The second public hearing of what we just went through.
Okay.
Sable Point and where's the other one?
The resiliency.
The resiliency conversation, but that'll probably be later on anyway, so.
Okay, so public hearing number 2, quasi judicial number 1.
That's it.
Okay, those two I'll move to after lunch break. Is the gentleman in the audience for departmental number 2? So we'll probably hear departmental number 2 after the lunch break as well. So then that will put probably departmental number 3 after this item. Okay.
For that consideration, I appreciate it.
Mr. DeValier, welcome, and today we have a presentation on the Martin County Police Athletic League program and an update.
Good morning, and thank you for having me here today.
And state your full name for the record, please.
My name is Noel Delval. I am the Executive Director of the Martin County Police Athletic League. And I just want to start out by discussing the Martin County Police Athletic League. This is an organization that a lot of people are familiar with, PAL programs in the United States. There's about 42 in the state of Florida. When I first initially did my research back in 2017, there was not a police athletic league in Martin County. So we started doing our due diligence to make that happen. And in doing so with a partnership through the Sheriff's Office, we were able to establish the Martin County Police Athletic League as a 501c3. Since its inception, the mission of the Martin County Police Athletic League, or the police athletic leagues as a whole, is a crime prevention unit to keep kids off the streets, off of drugs, and in a positive environment. We have molded and adapted our program to take it even a step further. Besides keeping kids off the streets and off of drugs, we are developing healthy, productive leaders of the future. Now more than ever, as you heard from Bob Zacchio this morning, and Commissioner Hetherington also reiterated the fact that mental health is a big issue with our youth, and PAL is here to be a part of that rehabilitation process. We have a lot of programs within our organization. We originally started with just a boxing program, and we've grown into a leadership program, a wrestling program. We have travel basketball in the works, and there's talks for golf and other programs as well. Our success through these difficult times of COVID has made it aware more than ever now that we have to increase our programming. Since COVID, I would say December of last year, we probably only had like 30, 40 kids in our program, and we're over 100 kids now. And it's only been a few months, and it grows about 5 kids per week. We're adding 5 kids a week to our programming. Our first program was boxing out of the gate when we used to run in our program out of a little 1,200 square foot space on Monterey. Some of you have been there, some of you are aware of it. But we had a 1,200 square foot space with a 20 foot by 20 foot boxing ring in there, and you can only imagine how tight it was in there to host 20 or 30 kids there during an event. We have recently grown and expanded and moved to Palm City to a larger location through a partnership we have established with Project Lift.
If I might just stop you there for a moment. This morning we heard some word about someone bragging about District 3 and Hobe Sound, that PAL was based in Hobe Sound. Did you just say you just expanded where?
Palm City.
Oh, there you go. Thank you so much.
So jealous. Jeez. Possessive guy.
Who's your next door neighbor?
There's two facets to our boxing program. We have a boxing fitness program where any kids can participate ages 8 to 17, and they train and work out as a boxer would without the contact and sparring or fighting, so to speak. The other aspect of our boxing program is the actual sparring and competition team. We have a competition team with about 12 youth in that program, and they train and they are scheduled. We have 3 kids that are scheduled to fight in April up at Port St. Lucie Powell, or St. Lucie Powell, St. Lucie Sheriff's County. So we're really excited about that. The kids are working hard and training hard. And we also provide, boxing is a great stress relief tool for the youth. Kids are really going through and dealing with a lot of things these days, and the stress release that we provide from things going on at school, growing changes, body changing, and social lives has tremendously helped these kids grow. We've given them different social circles to hang around with as well. We have youth from all facets, races, and demographics within our programming as well, all working together, hanging around together as a cohesive unit. So just some boxing photos, just some updates of what our space looks like, how many kids we have inside. So let me get to the wrestling. Our wrestling program started last year. We only had about 2 or 3 kids into the program. We reinstated it again in the spring of this year, and to our surprise, we grew to 14 youth. We were practicing in the Martin County High School wrestling room up until about a month ago, and we have now been displaced from that location, so we were scrambling to find new space. We entered into a partnership with the Banner Lake Community Center in Hobe Sound, where the wrestling program is going to move to. We have purchased and ordered new mats. Thank you to Commissioner Jenkins and other supporters within the community that have come forward to help us purchase those mats. And we will be offering our wrestling program hopefully the beginning of next month in Hobe Sound. And the children who are part of the Banner Lake Community Center as well will be participating in our wrestling program at no charge. Our wrestling program, as well as most of our other programs, are little to no fees to the youth in the county. So let me get to my favorite program, which is our leadership program. In December of last year, we only had 16 youth in our leadership program. Since COVID, and like Bob Zacchio mentioned earlier, with all of the mental health issue and stress that these kids are going through, we have partnerships with Department of Juvenile Justice, Health and Human Services here as well. A lot of the schools, the school resource officers as well, have been sending us numerous kids into our I Lead, I Choose Me leadership program. We are now up to 50 kids registered into our leadership program. $85 of those kids within our program are at-risk youth kids. Our leadership program is designed to provide an environment for leadership values to be introduced, practiced, and shared. This program is based on the John Maxwell I Choose program. This program teaches youth leadership values and how to apply them to their own lives. Values that youth can admire, implement, and choose to aspire to for a more positive and sustained style of leadership. Through our leadership program, we offer field trips to the youth to get out to do team building, challenges, facing their fears, working together. We also have community service projects that the kids have to do, whether they are in our leadership program or just as a regular PAL child. All of our kids are required a certain amount of hours of leadership, community service per year. So far, we have over 300 hours of community service with our youth. So I do have a video here. Hopefully this works. So this is one of the leadership training lessons we went to. We do a high ropes challenge course, and we had I think 7 males and the rest were females in this course, and it was pretty funny. I had 3 of my competition boxing team kids there, and when we turned the corner and the kids saw the high ropes, 2 of my competition boxing kids says, "No way, coach. There's no way I'm going up there." He said, "Put me in the ring with Mike Tyson, but I'm not going up on those ropes." So it was interesting to see the dynamic of what happened when these kids were immediately faced with a challenge. We had a lot of people who didn't want to compete and didn't want to go through the challenge, but they succeeded. They went through. They successfully went through, and it was interesting watching the kids face these fears, have support from their peers to push forward and go through these challenges together. So we were transformed the lives of 20 youth that day. And the ones that didn't compete stayed on the ground and cheered their peers on and made sure they got through each station and completed the thing. We also do icebreakers in all of our leadership meetings. Sometimes we do some Jenga. Kids enjoy that until I tell them they have to put blindfolds on and do them. Play the same game. So this is the end of the challenge course where they finish with a nice zip line ride. And like I said from the beginning, this leadership program really does change the lives of our youth, and we've had a tremendous success rate, and everybody knows one of our youth, Sandra, she actually spoke in front of County Commission, I think about a couple of years ago now, and she went through our leadership program successfully. She's still a peer mentor in our leadership program 2 years now later. She's going to be a counselor in our summer camp, in the leadership portion of our summer camp this summer. She was just awarded in end of last year the Florida PAL Girl of the Year. So she was awarded a scholarship, $1,000 scholarship. She had a brand new computer, a bunch of swag, and some of our loyal partners in the community paid for her and her family to go to Disney as well while we were up in Orlando. So that was a tremendous success story for what we do, but she's only one story of many that we have up and coming, and there's so many more in the county that we can help to grow through our programming. So like I mentioned earlier, we do have a partnership with Project Lift, and this partnership has made a dramatic change in the way we look at what we do. I never really looked at boxing and leadership and wrestling as a mental health therapeutic session, but in recent months, thanks to Bob, I've really seen watching these kids grow and release the stress they have, release the anxiety they have through the program that we have. We've had youth come into our boxing organization from Project Lift with the mental health issues, and we've watched those kids, those boys and those girls change just in one boxing lesson. It's amazing. We've had quiet, timid kids come over, they do boxing, they leave, the counselors run over from Project Lift. What'd you do? What'd you do? That kid is amazing. He's a changed person. What happened? What happened? And then the next week, they're the first ones to say, when am I going to boxing? They're speaking. They're open now. They're more outspoken. They're ready to talk about their feelings, what's going on in their lives. And then when we switch to the leadership component of our training as well, so we go through both boxing and leadership, we hear these kids open up. We hear them talk. We hear them about the choices that they have to make in life. And we are enabling them that outlet to have that physical. You know, boxing isn't about beating other people up. You know, boxing is a release. Boxing is a sport. It's a physical activity. It keeps you healthy physically and mentally, and that's what we are providing. Wrestling does the same thing. Our leadership program helps fine-tune the mind so that these kids, when they're faced with choices, and they're faced with a tremendous amount of choices in their lives, more so now than ever. What's this person doing? What's that person doing? Where's this person going? How am I looking at myself? You know, what is my self-worth? And we are really focusing on all that aspect to create these productive, healthy leaders of the future. So here's some examples of the Project Lift crew in with our team, doing some boxing. As you know, the county we've entered into a lease agreement with the county for land in Golden Gate, and our goal was to build a facility there to house the PAL building. So we have designed that building. Originally, we had a concept of 2 stories. We outgrew our first space of 1,200 square feet in 2.5 years. We're in our second space now, and that is close to 3,000 square feet, and we have outgrown that in 4 months. When we go back and look at the preliminary plans of our new space, we've outgrown that as well.
And that new space is in Golden Gate, which is in District 2, right?
Yes, it is.
Currently, if you're tight for space out there, I know it's sort of congested. We got plenty of space in District 5.
So our intent is to readdress the plans of the building for Golden Gate to make it larger. We're probably going to go 3 stories, and we are in the process of obtaining funds and collecting funds in a campaign to build that facility. Our program is 100% donor-based, community sponsor-based. We do have support from commissioners as well, and we greatly appreciate that as well. But when we do open that facility, we will keep our Palm City facility open as well. We will keep Hope Sound open as well, because we want to be able to reach the entire county and give programming to the entire county, because these kids need it now more than ever. So this is the original concept we had for the Golden Gate facility, which is going to go up. And I can take any questions if anybody has any questions regarding our programming.
Yes, Commissioner Campy.
Well, thank you very much. Obviously, I have firsthand witness. You're my next door neighbor with the program, so I see how the program has grown, tremendously. And I think the relationship with Project Lift was a match made in heaven. And where's Project Lift located? Right in Palm City. So I think the collaboration gives you all of the pieces. Project Lift had a lot of skills-based and mental health focus, but not as much based on what they were doing with the physical athletic activity, and your program had those features. So to marry the two together is tremendous, and it's my honor to support. As the program grows so large, how do you work in terms, I know John Perez is here and other members of the Sheriff's Department work collaboratively with you and they volunteer their time, but what about people that are watching this or hear about the program success that as adults want to participate? How do you incorporate adult volunteers?
We do have opportunities for adults to volunteer. There's a process for that to go through, and they can definitely reach out to us for that information. We do always try to ensure that we have some type of law enforcement present at all of our programs. There's always a sheriff that does and facilitates our leadership program. Captain Perez is always at boxing. The sheriff from time to time will come to boxing as well. We have a detective from the sheriff's office that's going to start volunteering on our wrestling program as well. We always have 2 deputies that are at every single field trip and community cleanup as well, because that interaction between the youth and law enforcement is very, very important. We've all seen what happened last year or this year, and we want to make sure that these youth understand that, not only are they there to serve and protect us, they do have guns and they do have rules that they have to follow, but behind all of that, every law enforcement individual is a human being, and we need to relay that message to the youth more now than ever, and that's why we always entrench the law enforcement into our programming.
Good for you. Thank you very much. Keep up the good work.
Great. And I just think it's wonderful that you have, a track record of success and Sandra and all of the leadership, the growing of leadership in our youth. You show your success measures. So I appreciate it. Does anyone else have any questions? keep up the great work, and thank you, and keep us updated.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and take public hearing number 2, and which is first public hearing to consider an ordinance amending Article 12 redevelopment code land development regulations, presented by
Good afternoon, Irene
Irene.
Sutherland for the record, but the item will be presented by Dana Little and Jessica Seymour from the Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council.
Okay, great.
And while you're setting up, it's not a reflection of your presentation, but I got to leave at 11:30, so if I walk out on you, it's not that I thought it was a bad presentation.
Good morning, Dana Little from Treasure Coast Regional Planning Council. I'm here with Jessica Seymour Corder from our office, and we're here to present the companion piece to what Irene Settlemyer presented this morning, which is the glitch bill, if you will, of the LDRs for the CRAs, the Land Development Regulations. I'll try to go through quickly. This is a public hearing to consider the amendment, an ordinance amending Article 12 of the Redevelopment Code, the Land Development Regulations. And as I go through the presentation, some of it's a bit tedious. We've tried to make it succinct and clear, but we wanted to start with just saying why a glitch bill. You know, we spent over 2 years working on 6 different codes in the CRA, as well as creating Chapter 18 and Article 12. And we learned a lot over that time. The creation of the codes itself was a learning process. So things that we assumed in Jensen Beach, we later found out in Port Salerno or Golden Gate, maybe we shouldn't have made those assumptions. Or we learned things throughout the process, not only on our own, but there was real-time input as some of these codes were adopted. So applicants were coming in to Irene and to Susan and saying, hey, I want to do a project in Rio, and what does this mean? And so we'd take a note and be sure to come back and fix it later or clarify things. So that's really what the glitch bill is about. It's not really undoing anything that we've done before, but actually we hope improve it. And I'm going to try to be, as I said, succinct about the types of changes that we've made. It's also an opportunity to take a fine-tooth comb through all 6 of the codes and make sure that there's consistency among them as well. Now, the packet that you received is, I think, about 300 pages, and I just want to assure you it's not as bad as it looks. It's filled with highlights and strike-through and underlines, and it looks enormous, like we've basically started from scratch in many cases. That's not the situation at all. I do want to point out, though, there are 3 primary types of changes that are included in this glitch bill. Number 1, there are Scrivener's errors, mistakes that we've made, spelling errors, grammar, wordsmithing, or smith wording, however you'd like to put it. There's a lot of reorganization. There are things that went into, say, Division 2 or Division 4 that then we started repeating in all of the divisions and then realized, man, this should really be in Division 1, the general division. So there are chunks of things that have moved around without changing their intent or their content or their instruction. But trying to reduce redundancy and provide greater clarity. And again, this is based upon real-time feedback from applicants. But there are substantive changes too. That does not necessarily mean that it's big or sweeping or overwhelming, but by a substantive change, we mean that there are some quantitative changes that we feel that you should be made aware of, or there's new language or even a revised approach that you should be aware of, that we felt as a team you should be aware of. Now, tracking the changes, as I mentioned, there's a lot of yellow in your packet, the highlighting, and a lot of strike through, which is remove text or tables, and underline, which is added text or tables. When a change has occurred within a section of the code, let's say a section 2 has a single strike through or a single underline, we have highlighted that entire section just to ensure that you focus on the context. That doesn't mean that all of the highlighted language has changed. It's just bringing your attention to the fact that some language may have been struck through or some language may have been underlined. You'll see a lot of pages have no changes at all. We provided the entire document to you for the sake of context. We initially were planning on just providing those pages that had changed, but even we couldn't track where we were in terms of the document. There's just so much information there. So, we struggled. Do we make the packet bigger than it really needs to be? But it will be more clear that way. So we opted for the full packet with the hopes of providing greater clarity. And so all of Article 12 was provided. So I'm going to try to quickly go through the substantive changes, the ones that we as a team, growth management, the CRA, your legal department felt that we collectively thought we should bring to your attention. I'm also, this presentation is organized numerically, if you will, so you can follow along in your package. So page 6, you'll see there's a new table there. It's figure 12, 1.02, and this is consistency with the future land use. Throughout this entire process, we would ask ourselves, and others would ask us, hey, in which of the future land use categories are which zoning sub-districts allowed? Are there limitations, And we thought that was a good question. We wanted to get through all 6 of them, though, before we answered that question. So this table just summarizes something that we've been thinking about for a long time. Which are the appropriate sub-districts for each of the future land use categories? And so you can see between the CRA center and the CRA neighborhood, the general and the mobile home is where they overlap. Multifamily, detached, etc., are more appropriate in the CRA neighborhood. So that's what the clarification, or this table, is meant to provide. Page 8, section 12.102, marine service areas. There was a lot of discussion about that this morning. I don't think we need to revisit that discussion. I will tell you, the language that is provided here was simply to provide enabling language. Let me back up. There was language, as you know, that existed in Chapter 4 in the comprehensive plan. In the comprehensive plan that that allowed for the modifications of the boundary of the marine service area. However, what we found out sort of late in the game was that the language that would enable you or give you instruction how to do that did not exist in the land development regulations. There needed to be an enabling language that allows that to happen. That's all this is. This doesn't really get to necessarily so much the content that we got into this morning or the revisions that were requested. This is just making the comprehensive plan and the code in communication with one another and consistent with one another. Page 10. Now this is an interesting one. This is big. We're going to come back to this a little bit later. But uses currently identified, actually the microbreweries and craft distilleries as new uses apparently have been discussed in Martin County for quite some time. And in fact, they already are identified in Article 3, Division 3 of the standards for specific uses within the existing big code. Not our new code, but the big one. And so the discussion was that it's always been the intent to bring those type of uses into the CRA. So this is the first time you're seeing this. We've created a new use group, which is called microbreweries and craft distilleries. The definitions are the same as they exist in the big code today. And so we've brought that forward to our permitted use table, and in a little bit I'm going to go through how those apply to each of the sub-districts. Page 13 and 14, section 12.1.04, open space. This is comp plan language that already exists in Chapter 18 that we have brought forward into Article 12. And I want to explain this a little bit. Throughout this entire process, we've always debated as a team, when is it appropriate to be redundant, to duplicate language between the comp plan and the code, and when is it appropriate to simply reference back to the comp plan. And what this we felt that some of these topics were important enough, because oftentimes an investor, a property owner, is going to run right to the code, right to the land development regulations to find out what they can do. The comp plan is some mysterious thing somewhere else. Maybe not so much in Martin County, but in most places it is. So what we've done is we've brought some of the comp plan language into the code to make sure that they weren't ever lost or overlooked. And that includes things like this open space language and the small site developments, what that means relative to open space and payment in lieu of. This is not new language. It's underlined because it's new to this Article 12. And we've done that a few times. Here's another example, home occupations. This language, for the most part, exists in the existing LDRs, but we brought it over because we needed to, but it has been modified to meet certain specific, intents of the CRA. Like for instance, the home occupation shall not change the outdoor appearance of the dwelling unit or an outbuilding. We wordsmithed it a bit to make it consistent with the vision of the CRA areas, but the language and for the most part exists already in the code. Finished floor elevations. We've had a lot of, this is page 17. We're still in Division 1. The majority of these changes, you should know, occur in Division 1, which are changes that apply to all of the CRAs. Finished floor elevations. We have a requirement where residential use is proposed in the first floor of a building that the elevation of the first floor must be raised, that the first floor must be elevated off the finished grade. It had always been 24 inches in the CRAs, except for Jensen Beach, where it was 36 inches at one point. But it was brought to our attention, and we had a good discussion with the CRA board that, the standard increment of stairs, obviously, is 7-inch risers, so why not make it 21 inches as opposed to 24, so that you don't, end up with some weird number. It's a simple thing, but it was kind of, it made a lot of common sense. So that's this change. We wanted to make sure that you understood the reason for that. Building transitions. We've talked a lot about building transitions. To your point earlier, Commissioner, in the CRAs, rather than having the density transition, you might recall we moved to building transition so that we're sure that the massing of buildings is what's being addressed, not as much the density. We revised the language. There's a lot of strike through and underline here. We revised the language to clarify intent. We also provided that 20 feet of separation versus 30 feet of separation is appropriate. And that's because of alleyways that exist. And let me see exactly where is that language. Go ahead, point. What we found is that there we go, down under exemptions. Thank you, Jessica. Under the first subchapter I, when the proposed commercial multifamily townhouse or mixed-use project is separated by a public open space or at least 20 feet. It used to be 30 feet, and that excluded alleys, because the alleys are typically 20 to 24 feet wide. So what that meant is that where your building transition should really occur, which is at the alleyway, it was not enabling the alley to do that. So that's why we changed that dimension. And then finally, in this round, we realized that our intent, I think, was always that the core areas of the CRA, the most intense areas, the historic areas, building transitions would be exempted. Building transition requirements would be exempted from the core area, meaning that if I have a single family house that's in the core area and has been for forever, and somebody wants to build a townhouse project next to me, they're not required to do the additional upper floor setbacks and build the masonry wall and all of that kind of stuff. We felt because, the anomalous single-family house in a historic or urban district is actually a very interesting part of the texture and the layered history of the place. I always think of 11 Maple Street in Jensen and that little cluster of houses there right on Main Street that create the art district. There has, however, been, I think, a public comment provided to you relative to that. And I think the concern, if I recall, was that this discussion was not had at the NAC level. This came, keep in mind, these glitch bills, if you will, the comp plan and the LDRs that we're presenting now, We went to the CRA board, we went to the LPA, and then now before you. We did not take all of these glitch bill items to each of the NACs of each of the CRAs. So I want to bring that up because I know that was one of the public comments. Page 18 and 19, this looks like a big change, and it kind of is, but it's really not. Convenience store with fuel, drive-thrus, etc. None of the content has changed. It's just that this language and these following diagrams existed in every single one of the CRAs post Jensen Beach, I think, or post Rio. So we thought, well, this is good information for all of the CRAs. So we lifted all of that up and brought it into Division 1. So this one change alone actually is responsible for buckets of yellow ink that are in your document. Page 20 in Division 1, Environmental Standards and Transportation Concurrency Exception Area. This is existing comp plan language that we thought is important to not be overlooked. And if I was an applicant or an investor, I'd want to know about these things. So this is, again, some of the comp plan language where the content hasn't changed. We've just brought it into the land development regulations to make sure that it wasn't overlooked and people were aware of it. Page 55 and 56, still in Division 1, garage and driveways. We added additional language to provide some clarity. Like, for instance, a question came up, well, some of the old riverfront homes, with super deep lots, oftentimes will have a carriage house up near the street, which is a lovely, typology, but we didn't really think about that. So, for instance, an outbuilding or building type is permitted between the principal structure and the street if the lot depth is, I think we provide 250 feet or more. Now, that doesn't mean that we want people on 50 by 100 foot lots putting their garages right up on the front of the house, But that was a unique condition that was brought to our attention, as well as that detached garages are permitted, but they have to follow the setbacks and building coverage requirements of like an outbuilding or something. So some of these are nuances that we missed in the first pass. Page 59, still in Division 1, landscape standards. We've had enormous amount of discussion about, of all things, dumpster enclosures, but they're important. And we took the language that exists in the current code, brought it into Article 12, but we beefed it up by saying that the dumpster enclosure had to be masonry, a masonry wall, and also that all non-conforming enclosures they were given a deadline by which they must come into compliance. We had a lot of debate about this, a lot of discussion, I should say, at the CRA board, and they made a lot of good points. It's significantly more expensive to do. It's not just the wall, it's the footer, it's the steel, it's the pouring, it's the inspections, it's the different trades are involved to do a 8x8 masonry dumpster enclosure when really the intent is to screen the use. And so we went back to the existing language of allowing for fences to take its place. That seemed reasonable to us. I was talked out of it by the rest of the team, but because I'm the unreasonable one. But nevertheless, we still think, though, that there should be, particularly in some of the the downtown areas, like Hobe Sound as an example, where you've got a number of restaurants that are right there. There is a public. It's not only a public image, but a public safety issue. If you've got dumpsters that are exposed and spilling out into alleyways and things. So we did keep the compliance deadline to be no later than 2 years from the effective date of this division. So once this is, assuming that this is adopted on second reading, I think that's when the clock starts. Right. We actually had a specific date in there before, I think, that we changed. Wall and fence standards, not unlike the stair discussion that I've just brought to your attention, but we discovered Eureka. We had brought over the 42-inch fence height from earlier codes, but guess what? The increment of retail, the retail unit increment is 48 inches. So obviously we weren't expecting people to cut 6 inches off the bottom of their fences when they bought them from any of those big box stores. We also revised number D. There's a lot of strike throughing there because it was redundant with the building transition section, And that was a case where we didn't want redundancy because it would be easy for those to become in conflict over time should either one of them change. Urban development standards. This is something that that we've dipped our toe in. We think it's important. These are sort of this language is meant to provide or require some additional information from applicants that are building in the most intense areas. What we learned in, where was that? It was in Hobe Sound. Yes, it was in Hobe Sound. Of a particular project, lovely project that came in, and turns out the drawings, the way they were shown, the new roof was going to be overhanging into the neighbor's yard because the setbacks are so small. And we thought, well, wow, there's not a lot of really urban type of construction that goes on in Martin County. So we wanted to make sure that, for instance, when somebody in the core or one of these other districts was submitting an application, that they were at least showing a little bit of their neighbor's property, so that you understood, if I'm doing a zero lot line condition, that I may have to get an easement from my neighbor in order to apply stucco or to maintain it or things. So there are different types of approaches and methodologies to construction, and that this is a first step, and this is a section that can be added to over time as lessons are learned. But you want to know some of these things before somebody starts building walls and things, So that's what that is about. Now, microbreweries and craft distilleries. I mentioned the use being brought in earlier. What I'd like to do is quickly go through each of the CRA areas and show you where these new uses would apply. And I think you'll see some consistency there. So in Jensen Beach, we've identified them as permitted in the core and in waterfront. So that would be the red areas here and the blue areas there, not in the sort of belly of the CRA, which is general, which has a lot of residential and a variety of smaller scale uses. In Rio, understanding that each of the CRAs are so different, we're recommending that the microbreweries and craft distilleries be permitted in the core, the waterfront, the corridor, and the industrial sub-districts. So the core, again, would be the red. The waterfront would be the blue, of course. Corridor, which is this sort of pink color which runs along 707. It seemed to make sense because there are some, the bowling alley is down here. There are other types of uses down here. And then the industrial. The industrial, these types of uses tend to gravitate towards industrial, particularly older industrial buildings or industrial districts. So we wanted to permit them there. We also did some cross-checking with the underlying zoning that was in place before and where these uses would have been permitted before. In Old Palm City, microbreweries and craft distilleries we're recommending would be permitted in the core and in the industrial section. So in Old Palm City, the core is all of the red here along Map Road and along Martin Highway. Martin Downs. Not in the corridor, but in the industrial over here. So this would really be the primary section. In Hobe Sound, the sub-districts that would permit these uses we're recommending would be core, corridor, and railroad corridor. Hobe Sound has this unique sub-district that only exists in Hobe Sound, which is on the opposite side of the tracks over here, just south of Bridge Road. There's a mixture of light industrial, commercial, and even a residential home or two. It's an interesting mix. We thought that's a great sort of location for this type of use, as well as the core, which is in red, and then the corridor sub-districts, which are these sort of orange throughout. And that's primarily because Hobe Sound is the only CRA, as we know, that has US 1 frontage. The rest just have Dixie Highway frontage. Port Salerno, the recommendation is that these uses go in the core, the waterfront, and industrial. So you see some consistencies here. The core being the red, the waterfront being the blue, and then the industrial being back here, which might not be as likely in some of the other industrial districts by the nature of this one, but we wanted to be consistent with the others. And then finally in Golden Gate, in the core, the corridor, and in the industrial again. In Golden Gate, the core and the corridor are almost extensions of one another. There are just some changes in use, which is why we define them that way. But the whole other side of Dixie Highway has the industrial district, which we thought would be appropriate for those uses. Continuing on page 180, that's the completion of the discussion for now, at least, about the craft distilleries and microbreweries. In Hobe Sound, we changed the street regulating plan a little bit to include one additional primary street, which is Porter here, which connects Dixie and US 1. As well as a couple of additional secondary streets, which are Southeast Roll, Petway, Washington Avenue, and Church Street. Again, because they are important streets that go through and connect those two primary corridors. We wanted to make sure that they were in the frontal lobe of attention for future improvements and protection within the CRA. And then I think we're getting towards the end here. There was a supplemental memo that was sent out with your package. And it has this entire section here. Jessica came up with this brilliant idea. There are so many items, and this is, I mean, if I was a staff member, I would just be thrilled to have this. Because it's so hard to cross-check when you're reviewing a project. Some of the information is still back in, Article 3, and you want to make sure that you've got a checklist to know, in Article 3, like the zoning districts, divisions 1 through 7. There are general provisions, standard zoning districts, standard for specific uses, miscellaneous development standards. This is all information that exists. And so what Jessica and Irene actually went through, yes, very gracious of you, went through and created this quick reference that's now going to hopefully be part of the LDRs, which shows which of the provisions in Article 3 apply or do not apply in the new LDRs. And it's particularly important for the specific use standards, and I'll show you in a moment. But it clearly identifies when it applies, does not apply, or when it's been modified or replaced. So this is a lot of text, but what I'll just show you quickly at the top, Article 3, these are the divisions and all of the subsections. As an example, Division 1, General Provisions, Applicability, Zoning Atlas and District Boundaries, Glossary of Terms. And then in the far column is that in the redevelopment zoning districts, 3.1 applicability applies except for 3.1C does not apply. 3.2 applies except for 3.2B does not apply. So we've gone through with a fine-tooth comb to provide where one who's reviewing or proposing a project needs to go and double check and make sure that they're meeting those provisions. But notice the standard zoning districts, all of those zoning districts that we replaced, none of those apply any longer. So this is just, clarification that none of those zoning districts in Division 2 apply anymore. Division 3 stands for specific use, as I said. This gets, for instance, Section 3.57, an apartment hotel. The definition or the intent of that hasn't changed, so it applies as it's written. Okay, so this is meant to be sort of the lexicon that weds the new code and the pieces of the old code that are applicable. And it goes through, certainly we're not going to read all of this to you, but we feel that this is going to be a very, very valuable tool, as I said, for applicants and users of the code, but for staff as well, hopefully, as they review projects. So this is the adoption schedule. You'll notice it's a lot less complicated than the one we used to present to you. And we are here today, March 23rd. We will be coming back hopefully on May 11th with the amended Chapter 18 Comprehensive Plan of Language that you reviewed earlier. And thank you so much for your time, and we are here to answer any questions. The recommendation be that the board move to consider the draft ordinance that amends Article 12, Divisions 1 through 7 of the Land Development Regulations pursuant to Section 125.664B, and schedule the public hearing for May 11th, 2021 prior to 5 p.m. in order to coincide with the hearing date for other related matters. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? This is a public hearing, so we're going to take public comment. I did have one. Yeah, I just saw Marcella step out. The only public speaker form I have is Marcella Camblor, who I believe just might have stepped out. Anybody else wishing to speak? Okay, comes back to the board.
I'd like to move to approve staff's recommendations.
Great.
Second.
We have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Jenkins, seconded by Commissioner Campy. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
So the motion carries 3-1 with Commissioner Hurd dissenting and Commissioner Smith absent. Okay. Thank you very much. And do we have staff here ready to do departmental number 2?
We can get them down here. Was it one that you wanted to do, Commissioner, after
No,
lunch?
we have, yes.
Okay.
Departmental number 1, we'll hold after lunch in case they're, and give the public commenter an opportunity. So departmental number 2, we have contracts that meet the threshold for board approval, $1 million or greater.
Someone's racing through the building.
So, Commissioners, the first one that we have here is for County Road A1A and Dixie Highway, a resurfacing project from Southeast Indian Street down to Southeast Jefferson Street. As you can see in here, the physical impact was, it's part of our CIP from 2021. The CIP sheets included were funded with State of Florida DOT funds from the Small County Outreach Program, or SCOP. We also have road MSTU, franchise fees, gas tax, as well as some other. And the Golden Gate CRA is also contributing some money. So staff is recommending that you award this contract to the lowest responsible bidder, which was CW Cheatham, in the amount of $1,592,893.80. Christy just showed up. Sorry. We're on number 2.
Commissioner Hurd, do you have a question?
I have a comment. I just want to say it's about time for this project to be before us. It's a terrific project. We should have done it 15 years ago, but thank goodness we're doing it now. It's going to make Golden Gate so much safer and so much prettier, and so it's a huge improvement. Terrific.
Absolutely, I agree.
Thank you. Christy Brotherton, Purchasing Manager. So item number 2 is our environmental consulting continuing services contract. This contract has a maximum not to exceed value of $5 million with a maximum not to exceed term of 5 years, which is our 3-year term with 2 optional 1-year renewals. Staff is recommending that the contract be awarded to Cardno, Ecological Associates, Enercon Services, South Florida Engineering and Consulting, Tetra Tech, and WGI. Staff is also requesting that the board authorize the county administrator or designee to execute any and all documents related to this request. And last, we have our environmentally sensitive lands exotic vegetation removal contract. This is also a continuing services contract. The maximum not to exceed value for this contract is $3 million with a maximum not to exceed term of 5 years. Again, another 3-year term plus 2 1-year renewal options. Staff is recommending that the board award the contract to the 4 lowest responsive and responsible bidders, which is A+ Environmental Restoration, Aquatic Vegetation Control, Native Creations, and Wetlands Management of South Florida. Staff is also asking that the board authorize the county administrator or designee to execute any and all documents related to this request. And that concludes this item.
Great.
Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Jenkins, seconded by Commissioner Hurd. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with Commissioner Smith absent.
Correct.
Very good. Okay, we are going to move on to departmental number 3, CARES Act broadband update.
Good morning, Madam Chair,
George Stokas, Assistant County Administrator. Staff is coming back to you. A few meetings ago, this body asked staff to research what could be done for broadband connectivity into the county. While doing so, staff looked at basically a holistic view of the county and broke it into two very distinct and different areas. The first being the urbanized area. When I say urbanized, I'm not looking at the urban service boundary line or anything like that. I'm just using a generic term. We discovered that basically there is plenty of service within the urbanized area. However, the biggest constraint to obtaining broadband services tends to deal with fiscal constraints. And in that case, there are federal and state programs authored through private carriers that have about $5 to $10 a month services. And we know the one area that staff will continue to work with is we will work with our not-for-profit community to spread the word on those various provider programs. A little bit more difficult of an area is the rural area or the rural service area. In this case, there's no service or very poor service, as you're aware. And as well as there's minor market enthusiasm to actually develop and build broadband networks in these areas. The main reason is because you're looking at millions and millions and millions of dollars. In fact, today I got an email from one of the carriers just to get the broadband into certain areas of District 5, we're looking at $6 to $7 million. However, there is good news that there is light at the end of the tunnel. Is the state of Florida, through the Federal Communications Administration, I think it is created and developed through the CARES Act a Florida Rural Digital Opportunity Fund, or RDOF. Some of the challenges that we have going forward, specifically to Florida, is that the Florida State Statute section, and I am not an attorney, there is one sitting on the dais, and she could probably opine a lot better on this than I can, but basically it requires a governmental entity such as us. It really limits and hampers our ability to create broadband networks and light the actual fiber and provide a utility. However, there is some good news. The Florida House is looking at considering revisions to governments providing broadband at this time. However, as the time we were authoring this presentation, we weren't aware of that, and we don't know where the conclusion will be once the state convenes. Capital outlay. Basically, all the components to provide broadband, it's no way you can cut it. It's not cheap. Even if we build it just to light it, just to operate it, it is really not a cheap enterprise to bring into. So that is why we're providing the following solutions for rural areas. The staff is recommending that we want to work with private enterprises on the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund. That is a grant opportunity that's only open to the private carriers such as Comcast, AT&T, and Indiantown Telecom, but they're not called that anymore. I believe they're called Bluestream because they were bought out. We reached out to all three of those companies. We are working with Bluestream, and we did talk with AT&T at length. They have the expertise, and they're going to move forward with their own application. And what we're asking as staff is we would like to assist these private companies in how to do grant applications. As you've mentioned in previous meetings, staff is great at getting grants. Private enterprises are not necessarily built or think about how do I go and get a government grant. The areas that, in talking to these private carriers, the area that is primarily underserved, believe it or not, is Western Palm City. Indiantown, to my shock, has actually quite excellent broadband accessibility through the Warfield Avenue corridor. And I've provided the picture that outlines the area in which we're discussing. And just for those who aren't actually watching TV, we're talking north of Martin Highway, down to going along Citrus, down to the Naked Lady Ranch area, the Palm City Farms area, almost just north of 95. Now, staff did not identify this. This was provided to us by Bluestream and AT&T as well as Comcast. When looking at solutions for the urbanized area, again, it's a different problem. It's not a capital problem. It's just getting the actual user knowledgeable of how to afford the access to the system. And we've come up with pretty much two ways to fix that. And that is, number one, we can look through the CARES 3 funding program to expand or enhance our Wi-Fi network availability at our public facilities. One of those could be at the Golden Gate building. Parks, libraries, and other facilities that you own that in most cases are already connected to the internet, we can look at putting and providing Wi-Fi access points that could be free to the public, it can be controlled, hours of service, and so forth. And the second is obviously to educate organizations such as United Way, House of Hope, and I know I'm eliminating hundreds of them by only mentioning those two, but letting them know about where the low-cost internet can be obtained and what programs are available. And that pretty much, Commissioners, is my presentation. We are not looking for an ask here. What we would like to do is just have staff provide technical grant assistance to any company in Martin County that wants to apply for the RDOF or any other broadband capabilities, and then staff working with our not-for-profit community to help educate and market the lower cost internet programs. We're not looking to expend any taxpayer dollars other than my time and salary, perhaps. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and there is no really recommended action except to accept the report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Stokas. Commissioner Campy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Stokas, I appreciate your work on this along with Mr. Merker. Obviously, that whole big red circled area is in my district, and one of the largest and most frequent complaints I get from residents that live in that area is the fact that there is virtually none, zero internet access. Now, in a time when all we hear about, those of us that have access to cable and the internet, what we're hearing about is students having to homeschool, businesses completely reinventing themselves to have employees work remotely, colleges that were not allowing students to be on their campuses to take official classes. We all take that as a weird hardship and, you know, having to change our lifestyle. However, these folks out here have no access to this. And it's not even a dollars and cents issues, because I have residents that said they would pay hundreds of dollars a month for the service. There's no service. And to me, it is shocking, as you know my feelings on this. It's shocking in this modern day and age, in what we would classify as, you know, this is not in the middle of nowhere. Okay, people just across the turnpike have full access to all of the amenities. I believe that internet access goes along with electricity and other very common services that people expect to have these days. I appreciate your efforts, but the concept that the global tax community of residents of Martin County would pay for mooring fields and beaches and parks and golf courses and libraries and all of these other things, but this most basic necessity for education and employment is not offered, and the county basically has a hands-off approach that, look, we're not going to spend any taxpayer dollars here, and basically these folks are on their own. We could fill the room with hundreds of people that can tell their story about how important it is to have access to this. I remember many years ago when Mr. Krizda was still with the county, we were faced with a real challenge that Comcast, it was originally Adelphia, and then when they were purchased by Comcast, they took our very reasonable service contract and I think went from $100,000 to $1 million. And Mr. Krizda, who was our CIO at the time, was able to create a fiber optic network and then bring in contractors to lay that cable, which when we first discussed it, when he first came forward, we thought it was an absolute Herculean effort that he made look pretty easy. Now, I'm sure it wasn't easy, but he negotiated with the Florida Department of Transportation to run the dark fiber lines in their rights of way. He got all of the constitutional officers to buy in, and the school district to buy in, and the hospital to buy in. And what would have been a horrible situation turned into a remarkable situation, and we need that kind of effort. And I know Mr. Merker has the passion for it and the knowledge for it, but I'm frustrated to hear that we're not requiring any action today and we're not going to expend any taxpayer outlay. Not your fault, I get it. But as interested in I as this area's commissioner, am interested in other services and amenities offered to Martin County residents in Jensen, in Hobe Sound, in Golden Gate, in Stewart. We need that same level of commitment from my colleagues that this is not an issue that we're just going to hopefully assist this private company to apply. I mean, if we need to run some fiber lines out there that would allow some companies, and I get it's not a monopoly, but it's nearly a monopolized industry of just a couple of gigantic players. But if we have Blue Stream that was Indiantown fiber optic and telephone, I know Jeff Leslie has always been a supporter of this. We've had meetings, as a matter of fact, as long ago as after last year's State of the County, we all sat at the same venue and talked about how we could do this. And now more than ever, we need to do that. If we were thinking about running water lines or sewer lines out there, and I'm not saying we are, but if we were thinking about that, the county would come up with a strategy and a financial package to do that. I think we need to, and I'm not an expert on this, but I want to at least light the fire again on how do we address this in a collaboration. I get that we can't go into the private service of providing these services to residents, but if we at least put the main lines or something beyond just hopefully this will work out. We owe it to these residents. Their tax dollars are deposited into the general fund, as well as people, if you're looking at this diagram just over to the right of this picture, that's 1920 out there. They have zero internet access. Zero. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Commissioner Hurd.
Yeah, there are, I certainly understand your frustration, but there are very good reasons why government is not allowed to compete with the private sector for the provision of these kinds of services. So it's and as Mr. Stokas said, the reason that that the private companies are not doing it is because they don't want to spend a ton of money in order to get very, very few users. I live in the urbanized part of Martin County, and my internet service is also terrible. So it's not just exclusive to the western communities. The reason I pushed my light is because, Mr. Stokas, in the last year, you've had to undertake some brand new challenges, ones that we've never experienced before, whether they're related to federal dollars being just redistributed because of CARES, because of flooding. You've really had to step up your game, and you've done a great job. You really have. I'm very impressed with the actions that you've taken in order to make sure that our residents are helped in a timely manner and get as much federal aid as possible. The state aid too, but particularly I'm talking about the federal aid. Good job.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yep.
Thank you, Commissioner. I would be remiss if I didn't thank. I mean, there's every department in this county has lifted heavily, and I appreciate the compliment. But I mean, it really, when I say it really has been a team. Our staff has really stepped up to the plate. I mean, every department. I mean, legal and legal especially. I think I walk into their office and I think, they have a candy jar and I like to take candy, obviously, but I think they want to throw it in because they know CARES 1, CARES 2, CARES 3, all these things. So I appreciate it, and I hear both of your perspectives, and we will continue to work with the private enterprises, and we are working with Mr. Leslie to try and enhance the service as much as we can.
Okay. Ms. Woods.
Sarah Woods, Martin County Attorney. I won't belabor the point, but I think that our agenda item, and Mr. Stokas made it clear, we're really hamstrung by the state law completely. Several years ago, we attempted, under the leadership of Mr. Krista, to make a change to the Florida statutes. We were not successful. If there is currently that legislation within the legislative bodies, we can certainly, with Mr. Merker and Mr. Stokas' assistance, pursue that. But it's going to take a Herculean effort to change the laws and see if we can find a way so that, as Commissioner Hurd mentioned, we're not competing against the private sector, but we are serving those underserved communities. And I'm not sure exactly how we'd split that baby, but, you know, perhaps we can, once the legislature's out of session, see how this current legislation works and see if there's any alternatives. I know Mr. Merker could help us with his professional organization as well, if there's anything out there. Thank you.
Commissioner Campy.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify. I would make a motion that we send a letter of support to our legislative delegation for whatever action is being taken, as Mr. Stokas had mentioned, that might positively benefit us. A letter of support that the commission, that the chair could sign. I know that we do that for many other topics. And then I would also ask, I have to imagine that in many cases, this is not a situation unique to Martin County. Perhaps reaching out to FAC or the Small County Coalition to see how they're handling it. And as well as the fact that if there are CARES dollars, I see on our FAC email update every day that talks about a little slice of what's happening in the state. They're always talking about broadband. As a matter of fact, they're having a virtual seminar, I think either this week or next week, where they're discussing this very topic. If we were allotted CARES dollars from the federal government through the state government to us, and we used millions and millions of dollars to our not-for-profits to purchase food and other supplies, to pay people's rents, to pay people's mortgage payments and their utility bills. If there is a reason, like in one of your first slide that said there is no appetite for the private sector to participate because of the fiscal constraints, that it would cost a lot of money to do this, or minor market enthusiasm to provide services due to capital costs. If we received millions of dollars in CARES fund to offer services for people that were hungry or financially constrained for their bills, this situation of not having internet and broadband access for people that are forced to educate themselves or to work from home should be maybe not as, obviously I'm not going to minimize the fact that people are looking for food, but for the kids that have no choice but to do their schoolwork and the folks that have no choice but to work from home, to have no access to do that. Some people say, well, there's broadband in the libraries. Okay, well, that's not a logical solution for families to drag all their kids to sit in the library all day. I'm pretty sure you could sense my sense of urgency for this, because that's what I hear from my constituents, and my constituents are everyone's constituents, not just mine. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a light on by Mr. Stokas.
Madam Chair, I was just going to highlight what County Attorney Woods happened is all the counties are starting to realize that we're all hamstrung on these broadband, and some have been able, they've had more infrastructure and they've been able to be creative. I know to the south of us that they partner with the school district and they have the ownership of towers and so forth. Staff will continue to go back. I also wanted to mention, I apologize, when I wrote this PowerPoint, CARES 3 had not been approved by Congress. So because of our board schedule, my PowerPoints get to be a little outdated for when Congress acts, believe it or not. So, but I do hear all of you loud and clear, and we'll go back and I'll continue to update you both privately and possibly publicly once CARES 3 money does arrive to the county. And Mr. Merker and I will continue to find ways to get innovative and to spread all this. So, and we'll definitely be reporting back.
I have a motion.
I
Second.
don't think it needs to be a motion.
No, he wants to send a, well,
We always do
Letter
social
of
letter,
letters.
yeah.
Okay.
So we have a motion on the floor for a letter of support by Commissioner Campy, seconded by Commissioner Jenkins. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion carries 4-0 with Commissioner Smith absent. So we're going to go ahead and take our lunch break for the day and come back at 1:30. So we will be rejoin our meeting at 1:30 p.m.